Hello everybody, I'm Mr. R. This is the Rondinelli project, and I'm back with the third session of our fish replica tutorial. Today, I have a short video on how to prepare the fins and the gills for our fish replica. We're doing a black crappie. I've done sessions 1, 2, and now this is 3. I know it's a lot, but there's a lot to this hobby, so let's check it out. This is the left pectoral fin, this is the right pectoral fin. Down here we have the left pelvic fin and the right pelvic fin. You remove all the fins and they have to have a mold created for them. Just like producing the mold with the fish, you have to do the same process for the fins. And that's what I'm going to show you right now, is how to recreate these fins. The gills are also included in this process. Before you begin, you have to put down high fiber bedding to create a bed for the mold to put your fins in, and that's what I'm doing here. It's exactly like you do for the fish, it's just not as much, it's not as big. You want to add water as needed to get a nice smooth surface. A spray bottle works very nicely for this process. The more water you add to this, the smoother you can make it. Doesn't have to be perfect, but the smoother the better for fins. Fins are pretty delicate, as you'll see here in a moment. I keep the left and right fins separated so I know what I'm dealing with. I'm going to put this first fin down and show you how I fan it out and get it in place. And then it's the same thing for the rest of the fin, so I'll then speed it up. Then I use a paintbrush with water and smooth out the fin. And I'm seating it in the high fiber, and that's why you want the surface to be wet, because it kind of adheres the fin to the high fiber and keeps it in place, which is really important because the fins are like onion skin. They're not very thick, but I fan it out to a nice position, and when I'm satisfied with that, that's what I do. And then speed this up, and I use the same process for the right fin and the back pelvic fins as well as the gills. Here I'm placing the left pelvic fin, putting it in place, and then I will place the right pelvic fin, get it in position, get it seated, and then I'm putting the left gill and the right gill. I'm only using those two, left and right, because that's all you're going to see with the way the operculum is flared in this particular replica. What I'm going to do next is put in my key markers to put the two halves together once I have the A and B side of the molds made. Then we take the hairdryer, dry off the top of the surface. You do this to give some definition, tighten up the fins, and then I use my PVA, which stops the resin from sticking to the fins and gives them some nice definition so that you get a good imprint in your mold. Once again, you want to hit that with the hairdryer just to dry off the PVA and prepare them for the first pour over the fins. This is a 50-50 pour of fiberglass resin and Bondo. I'm going to use only 1 ounce of resin. Then I'll mix the Bondo, 1 ounce of Bondo, so I'll have a total of 2 ounces once I add this to the mixture, and then I'm going to want to stir that up really well. And there's your 2 ounce total. Now I'm getting ready for my pour. I mix that thoroughly. Add my MEKP, it's 1/10 ounce, gets 1 drop. So 1 ounce is 10 drops, and then I put in my catalyst for the Bondo, and I'm ready for my first pour. Right over top of your high fiber bedding and the fins. Make sure you capture all your markers so that you know how to align your mold properly once it's all done. Those markers are those little indentations that I put on around the edges. And you're going to set that aside to let it set. Take about a half an hour. This is the same process once your first coat sets. I'm only going to use a half an ounce, which is 5 drops of MEKP. Mix this up and then add my fiberglass topping, the fiberglass matting, and it melts with the resin. And this is what makes your mold sturdy. This is your side A mold. Take a china brush thoroughly, put your fiberglass down, put it where you need strength, and then set that aside to also set. That usually takes from a half hour to 40 minutes. It depends on the humidity, it depends on the temperature, but by an hour it should be set. This is the beauty of these plastic trays. The fiberglass resin doesn't stick to it. It comes right loose, which I like. Now I'm going to flip this over, and this is kind of like play in the clay. So we got to clear all this high fiber off, but you have to be really careful with fins. You got to use your fingers here. You got to get kind of dirty. You want to wipe away all of this high fiber. I sped this up, but as you get close to the fins, you want to be careful because you don't want to pick the fin up and ruin the fin, because you're going to need this side of the fin for the second part of the mold. So be very, very careful. You get off as much as you can with your hands, and then, and only then, you're going to clean the mold with water until it looks like this. All the high fiber comes off, and the PVA held the fins in place almost like glue, but it'll help separate and define. What I'm doing here is I'm trimming the mold, getting rid of all that fluffy stuff and yucky stuff on the edges. Makes for a nice clean mold. And now I'm going to be ready for my next pour. Kind of repetitive. You're going to dry off the mold. Gives your fins definition in the gills. You're getting ready to add your PVA, which is going to be a mold release. I'm going to not only do the fins, but I'm going to do the entire side A mold as well, because at this point, when I do my next pour, I want to have that PVA on there so that it's easy to separate these two halves. That's the whole purpose of this. Then you dry it with the hair dryer. That helps that PVA set. You don't want to put that pour on until that PVA is set up and dry. It's really important to do that. Once you're satisfied, your PVA is good and dry, you're ready for your side B pour. You're going to mix your resin and your Bondo, 50-50 mix, just like we did before. You're going to add your MEKP, you're going to add your hardener to the Bondo. The resin and the Bondo each has its own catalyst to harden. So that's what you use. Once you make that pour, then let it set. Now we're going to coat the surface of this mold with fiberglass resin, put our fiberglass matting down and for strength. And once you have that done, set that aside to dry. After your mold sets, you're going to want to clean it up, and you're going to now separate the mold. I take a screwdriver and I find the center point, and you start to create the separation, and you work the whole way around the mold until it releases. Fin molds are pretty easy to release. It's not like the fish mold. But go carefully so you don't damage anything. And once that releases, you'll be able to separate the A and the B side, and then you're going to go to the next process of cleaning those fins out of there, because you're not going to need them anymore because you now have your mold created. I just use a pair of forceps to clean out the fins and the gills. Clean them out the best you can. and then you need to run them under water with a little bit of Dawn dish soap and a toothbrush and really clean them. But that's how the mold fits together, your A and B side. This is your final process. You need to deep clean the mold, get all the parts and particles out of there so you have a good clean surface when you actually cast this mold to recreate the fins. Because the fins that you detached, you now have to recreate, and you have to reattach them to your fish body, and that's down the line. But in order to do that, you need to have a good mold. So it's really important to clean these well. And once everything's good and clean, then you want your mold to dry and you're ready for the next phase of your fish replica. And there you have it, two cleaned A-B sides of the fins and the gills, and there's the fish body, and this whole process is now complete. Make sure you tune in for session 4, because we're going to actually cast the fish. See you then. And there you have it. That's how you do the fins and anything extra like the gills in a fish replica. Until next time, I'm Mr. R, and this is the Rondinelli Project. And yep, we gone.